Coming up on Browns Countdown, we recap the Orange and Brown Scrimmage. Andrew Gibreel sits down with Joe Hayden, and we take a look ahead to the Browns' preseason opener against the Saints.
All of this is good information for me, good data for me, good data for our staff, good data for our executive team to really look at every possibility we have as we move forward.
This is Browns Countdown live from training camp.
And good morning. A nice sunny morning here in Northeast Ohio. A very quiet and still day here at the Berea Complex for your Cleveland Browns as we talk about the Orange and Brown Scrimmage with Matt Wilhelm and Nathan Zegura. And guys, it's always a pleasure to be on Browns Countdown. It's
good to have you back. Yeah.
It's good to be here. I feel excited. Listen, let's go back to Friday and talk about this Orange and Brown Scrimmage. What did we learn?
I think we learned that this defense is going to be able to get after the quarterback. And watching that scrimmage, no touchdowns on offense. We talked about it. Two things kept standing out: sacks and penalties as drive killers. But I thought what stood out to me, defensively, this team was going to get after the quarterback, and that's what we've needed for a long time.
What stood out to me, and I know we're going to hear from him later in the show, is the re-emergence of Joe Hayden. There were many times where Joe Hayden was tested down the football field, and Joe Hayden stayed in phase, made the plays, would come up and make the tackle. Those are all the attributes we thought of Joe Hayden early in his career when he eventually got that extension to stay a Cleveland Brown.
All right, before we get into the quarterbacks, because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about, how realistic is this game as you look forward to New Orleans? I mean, there's a lot of times when you're looking at a sack that's not really a sack. You don't complete the play sometimes, yet guys are at full energy.
Well, it's tough to tell because Myles Garrett, for example, the coaches said he had 4 sacks. He was credited with 2 in that scrimmage, and it's not a traditional game. Sometimes, you know, you're not taking the quarterbacks down, and sometimes quarterbacks get out of those sure thing sacks, and sometimes they get tripped up. So it wasn't a full look at the game, but I thought you had a pretty good sense of what was going on. And one of the things we talked about going into that game is if guys on the white team, which was all the second-team guys, if they could stand out, they could really maybe make a move, and I certainly thought some guys did stand out, like Jordan Leslie and J.P. Holtz.
I definitely agree, and just to get into the game planning, you know, for that scrimmage and then how much different it's going to be for the August 10th Saints game in the preseason, it's an opportunity for the defense, and Greg Williams probably really carried into that scrimmage 5 to 10 defenses, just because they're the pinnacle of exactly what he wants to do. Everything else he does is a growth from those basic defenses that he wants to see his guys, both in the Brown squad and the white squad, understand. And then offensively, I'm sure Hugh probably had 12 to maybe 20 plays. And carrying into that Saints game, that might double, even though it's going to be very vanilla, both offense and defensively.
And I do want to get into quarterbacks for 1 second. Just answer this one question. Logistically, how important is it for young players just to understand what it feels like to go back to the locker room at halftime in a pro stadium, to walk through what you're going to do before the game? Because it's different than college.
Sure, it absolutely means a lot. And I think, you know, Nathan and I really shined a light on DeShone Kizer. You know, yes, he missed that throw in the end zone to Duke Johnson in the scrimmage, but DeShone Kizer's making these throws in a Browns uniform in that stadium on that turf for the first times in his life. So the more he does it, the more you can understand why there's a realistic opportunity for DeShone Kizer to potentially be our starting quarterback this season sooner than later.
All right, jump into the quarterbacks. What did you think Kizer did on Friday?
I thought going back and actually watching the tape of it, yes, he missed that throw to Duke Johnson, which probably would have been the biggest talking point coming out of that since nobody else produced a touchdown. But I thought he did some things very, very well. His ability to move in the pocket, keep his feet set, and still throw the ball down the field. I thought the play to Ricardo Lewis, you want to see Ricardo come up with that one, but what stood out to me about it, he sensed the pressure coming up the middle, slid to his right, stepped into throw, and still threw it on a dime 40 yards down the field. He does things that other quarterbacks on this roster simply aren't capable of doing, and that includes extending some plays with his legs, which we saw in that scrimmage as well.
You definitely do, and I think for all 3 quarterbacks in this league, especially for, you know, all of them, at least Kessler and Kizer, both in a very, you know, infinite stage of their quarterback career in the National Football League, Hugh Jackson, you can tell, is stressing staying in the pocket and delivering the football. You know, and it forces that offensive line to basically build around that pedestal, you know, that 5 to 7 yard drop, you know, behind that line of scrimmage, and protect that spot and go through their reads, because things are going to break down and you're always going to have to improvise. But if Hugh can get these guys to stay on that spot and deliver the football and go through their reads, that's what wins in this NFL. It's not moving that pocket and getting out of the edge that consistently.
But how much faster will Thursday night feel for him when he gets out there against another team other than guys that aren't going to kill him in practice?
Well, sure. I mean, I think for DeShone Kizer and Cody Kessler, it's going to be way different because they're going against that white squad, as we saw on Friday night. That's predominantly guys that are, you know, 20 of those guys might make this football team. The other 30 guys might not be on an NFL roster. So the competition is going to be significantly different. How much are we going to see of the Saints starters? Probably nothing more than a series or two. So who gets those first-team reps for me really gives me a clue into Hugh Jackson's mind on this competition.
So where does Cody Kessler stand here?
Listen, I think that Hugh Jackson coming out of this, I think he's going to go one of two ways going into Thursday night game, and I don't think either one of those directions involves Cody Kessler. I think he's either going to come out here, and we're going to see practice tomorrow. DeShone Kizer, you're the guy, you're the future. You've done a very good job. Didn't have the best day at the Orange and Brown, but if you look at his whole body of training camp, probably been the best quarterback here. We're going to go with you. Or he's going to say, Brock, you're the veteran. We're going to start you in this first preseason game. Kizer, you're keeping your first-team reps, and Kessler's first-team reps are gone. Brock will take those going forward.
Do you agree with that?
I do to a certain extent. I think Kessler has been given the opportunity after what we saw from him last season. Hugh Jackson, as he said early in training camp, owed this opportunity to Cody Kessler based on OTAs and minicamp to enter in this competition. But in some cases, nothing has ever wavered in our understanding of who Cody Kessler is as a quarterback. And I think what you see each and every day from DeShone Kizer is an opportunity that leaves you wanting more. And I think Hugh wants to see him, call the huddle, get in and out. And the one thing that reigns supreme for me is the opportunity to go back and read Hugh Jackson's transcript from yesterday and his comment about who gives us the best opportunity to score points and win football games. I think Cody Kessler can keep us in football games. I think Brock Osweiler could potentially win us football games. And I think if DeShone Kizer plays his best, could potentially make some spark plays and win as well.
So, Nathan, has Kessler stayed the same, or is he regressing here in camp, or just not taking advantage of the opportunity? Where is he?
I think he's struggled, and I think he'd be the first to admit to you that he has struggled. Yesterday, threw a pick-6 to Jamie Collins, and he just has not moved the offense. Yesterday, the offense scored 3 touchdowns. None of them were with Cody Kessler. So it's just been a tough camp for him, and I think you're seeing maybe some of the physical limitations that he might have, and you get nervous and you put pressure on yourself, because one thing Cody Kessler did do well was get the ball out, and now you're seeing him hold on to the ball. It's almost like he doesn't know where to go with the ball, or he's waiting for guys to come open, and you can't do that in the NFL. I think he struggled. He's gotten the opportunity, but he struggled.
All right, so going to Brock Osweiler then, do you believe he's got the opportunity to be the first-team starting quarterback in that first game of the season?
I definitely do, and the reason being is because Brock Osweiler, and I'm sure there are guys in this building that are counting the number of reps these quarterbacks are getting. Brock Osweiler, as we saw Friday night in the Orange and Brown scrimmage, got the most reps at the quarterback position. So I think it leaves Hugh Jackson wanting to see more of him handle these offensive concepts, to ask him to get him out of some of the old habits and the bad habits that happened in Houston, probably being reckless with the football, and fall into his reads and making the proper throws to the proper open receivers within Hugh Jackson's offense, while he's grooming DeShone Kizer and growing him within those 1 reps, and also allowing Kessler to stay in this competition. But as you mentioned, Nathan, it's going to be very, very close to see Kessler, kind of fading away and falling behind in this contest.
Yeah, Brock hasn't gotten a first-team rep yet. I mean, he went against first-team defense in the Orange and Brown scrimmage, was able to move them pretty well between the 20s, couldn't finish any of those drives, but maybe this is where he gets an opportunity to work with the first-team offense for the first time, and if he does that, as I said, I think it comes at the expense of Kessler's reps. Kizer's reps, in my opinion, are either going to stay the same, or they're just going to say, you're the guy, and we're going forward with you, but I do think Brock has an opportunity to get some of those first-team reps. It seems to me those are the 2 ways they could go.
All right, when we come back, Joe Hayden was impressive on Friday night. I think these guys think that. We're going to get more breakdown of him, and we're going to go one-on-one with Joe Hayden when Browns Countdown returns live from Berea. Back after this. Welcome back to Browns Countdown. He is the jersey that was worth buying 8 seasons ago. Still playing strong with your Cleveland Browns. It's Joe Hayden, who looked good on Friday night, and he had a chance to sit down with our own Andrew Gibreel.
All right, we're here with Joe Hayden, and Joe, this has been a really productive training camp for you. You're back in good health. How have you felt out there?
Man, I feel really, really good. 100%. We got after the rehab this off season, so I've been ready to go ever since training camp started.
Now, it seemed like early Greg Williams has challenged you, the entire defense. How have you responded, and how have you seen the guys on the defense respond?
I accepted the challenge. At the end of the day, we haven't been playing as high-level defense that we wanted to, and bringing him in here, he's an in-your-face defensive coordinator. He wants his defense played a certain way, and I feel like we needed that. We needed that challenge. We needed a coach that would be able to make sure they keep everybody accountable for doing their job. I think it's been all positives for him being here, and then everybody's accepted the challenge from the vets on down.
What'd you learn about the defense and maybe the secondary from the Orange and Brown scrimmage?
Man, we got some dudes that want to play some ball, not afraid to throw their nose in there. I think we did a really good job tackling. I think that's going to be really, really big for us. Just getting that toughness.
And we all know what you guys have with you, Jamar, Jason McCourty, even Brian Body Calhoun. What are you seeing from some of the guys that are trying to get one of those last spots in the room?
I would say with Burley, my boy Hillary, all of those guys, man, they're just getting after. They're taking coaching, and it's just a competition in our room. Everybody's competing. Everybody knows that. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be locked in. You gotta know your calls. Gotta know your checks. And then at the end of the day, you gotta make plays. So we have a very, very competitive room, and everybody's helping each other out because at the end of the day, we just know the best players are gonna be on the field to play.
And looking ahead to Thursday, what's the one thing you try to accomplish in that first preseason game?
Oh, man, we just 3 and outs, try to create turnovers, just try to get an identity. Whenever the ones are out there, you just want to know that we're warming up for the season, making sure all of our checks, everything's going fluent, get some 3 and outs, get some turnovers, and get out of there.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew Gibreel with Joe Hayden in a stand-up interview. I said they were going to sit down. I disappointed you and took the wrath of that for the last 30 seconds.
Attention to the details.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. At first I looked at the video, I thought they were sitting, then they were standing, so my bad. Shame on me. All right, so what is the value of Joe Hayden, and what did you see out of him Friday night?
He looks good. He's added some weight. He's physical. Greg Williams, we've talked about the corners in his system have done very well. Janoris Jenkins, Tremaine Johnson, been very successful on the field and at their bank accountants as well. And Joe Hayden, a guy, wants to prove everybody wrong. He's been banged up the last 2 years. They're really kind of managing his practice schedule. He says he feels great in talking to him. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder and wants to prove that he's still one of the elite corners in the NFL.
Oh, absolutely, Nathan. And I think when I watch Joe Hayden, I see him out on the practice field, and what we saw from him in the Orange and Brown scrimmages, we're not seeing Joe Hayden constantly up in that man press situation as he's been in some of the past defensive schemes. And that's a good thing because, again, no offense to Joe, but everybody loses a step. And you can't always do what you did when you're in the younger portions of your career. So I think as we're finding out slowly but surely, Greg Williams is finding what each individual does best, and he's asking them to do what they're best at on a consistent basis. So Joe can play up, but he can also play off. And I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of a guy like Joe Hayden, who in some cases always wanted to be the man, the shutdown corner. In this case, he doesn't have to be. All he has to do is his 1/11th and do his job within this scheme. That means the pressure gets home. He covers his guy up, errant throw. So don't be surprised if Joe Hayden, who, again, as we saw, in phase an awful lot in the Orange and Brown scrimmage, don't see his interception numbers go up.
What did you think of the other defensive backs? Maybe Jamar Taylor, Jason McCourty. What did you think of some of the veteran guys that were out there?
Well, I thought they looked very good, and I think Jamar Taylor's had an excellent camp. Would have had an interception if it weren't for a Myles Garrett second. I mean, we were halfway through the show. We haven't talked about Myles Garrett. I just kept to say, this guy is as good as advertised every day out there, dominant. McCourty, a very sure tackler, knows where he's supposed to be, and I thought that stood out. But if you want to talk about the one defensive back that I thought jumped out to me in the Orange and Brown scrimmage, it was Gibreel Peppers. Yep. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon, playing at a different speed than other people, and he really can lay the lumber. He can bring the boom, and I thought near that goal line, they put him out in space. He read the route properly, closed, and didn't allow the first down to happen that would have set up probably a touchdown situation, a goal-to-go situation. I was very impressed with Gibreel Peppers.
And it just goes to show for these young players, especially a guy we're asking a lot of, being a #1 pick, to play defense and to have an impact. We know the impact is going to come on special teams, but when you see Gibreel Peppers, as you said, being explosive and moving around, the way he was with the velocity he was, that means his mind, the game is, and we heard Deshaun Kaiser say the game is slowing down. That means it's also slowing down for Gibreel Peppers. He's not swimming in this defensive playbook anymore, and he's allowed to go out there and be the great athlete that we drafted him to be.
How much of that moving around is Greg Williams playing to his strengths rather than, whatever everyone said about him at Michigan? What is he? What is he going to do? And Greg Williams is going to let him be what he needs to be on defense.
No doubt, and I think you saw in the Orange and Brown scrimmage, there were times where he was close to the line of scrimmage. There were times when he was blitzing and trying to get a sack. There were times when he was playing a single high safety deep in the middle of the field. So he was doing it all in this defense, and you can see his ability to change directions and accelerate is pretty much unparalleled, I think, on this football team, and he's going to give him opportunities to just go play fast and hit people.
And the same way that we offensively talk about, Duke Johnson, is he going to come in as a running back or is he going to line it up as a wide receiver? You got DeValve and Njoku, both athletic tight ends. The same can be said from pretty much any defensive back in this Greg Williams scheme. You don't know, just because you have 3 corners and 3 safeties by position in the depth chart book, if they're actually going to line up at safety or line up at corner because of the different coverages and the different blitzes that we're going to bring from that back end.
All right, guys, I want to let everybody at home know there's still plenty of time to go out there and get seats for the regular season. In fact, Select a Seat is coming up. That's August 26th, where you can select a seat. Pretty easy.
That's good. That's good.
It's from 11 to 2 at First Energy Stadium, and if you'd like to pick out your seat. You just go there, you pick it out. Browns alumni are going to be there as well. You get a tour of the stadium. There will be plenty of stuff for kids to do as well. Season ticket packages start at just $298 per seat, and Josh Cribbs will be there as well. So bring your pen, get ready for some autographs. When we come back, we are going to break down the lines, the offense and defensive lines from what we saw on Friday night. Plus, we're also going to look ahead to Thursday and the New Orleans Saints. That's all straight ahead on Browns Countdown.
One of the great parts about being an older player on this team is you've got a lot of knowledge that you can give to these younger guys and see big leaps and bounds of improvement with just a few tips.
You know, I'm definitely the elder statesman on the D lineman by a long shot, I feel like. So, you know, I try to do what I can to bring along the younger guys and help coach up, you know, where I can.
Okay, go. There, good.
Almost all the guys are older than me there, so I was trying to see what they know, pick on the things they've learned, you know, through their experience in the games, and you know, how I can just be better in my steps and the small little details.
A lot of it's taking the onus off the rest of the guys. You need to come up there, and my job is, in my mind, to make sure everybody knows what they're doing, who they've got, and that way they can play fast. If they're not up there trying to piece together the picture, if you can go up there and tell them what they're looking at, all of a sudden they can go and just play football. And that's when you get a team, you know, playing fast and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
That was your Gatorade Hot Minute as we take a look back at the Browns from the scrimmage the other night and throughout practice here. I want to talk about the lines from the last game, and in particular, what did you see on the offensive line? I saw a lot of growth and potential for the running game because we've talked about how good this offensive line is on paper. I don't know as a fan if you can sink your teeth into how good they're going to be from watching a scrimmage, but I saw a lot of things that made me say, hey, that we're going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, they looked very good running the ball, and I would say Isaiah Crowell's chunk run about 40 yards, probably the best play of the scrimmage from the first-team offense. And really what stood out to me was it looks like Sean Coleman definitely has a leg up in this competition. He was the right tackle out there, looked good. And then J.C. Tretter, and I know it was called back on a holding penalty, but that fullback screen to Danny Vitale, and you said it was a bad call, really would have put them down in the red zone. And it was J.C. Tretter getting from the center position 15 yards down the field as the lead blocker on that. That impressed me, that kind of athleticism we haven't had at center since Alex Mack was here.
Absolutely, and I think when you really dive in, and the one thing I love to do is to listen to Hugh Jackson and kind of read between some of his comments. And I just love while we as media members want to ask about the quarterback, Hugh Jackson throws in there, well, I know we can run the football. So you can understand Hugh's confidence in the investment in that offensive line to see it kind of really happen and develop the way he wants to, regardless of the running back, whether it's Crowell, whether it's Duke Johnson, whether it's been Matthew Days. All these guys are getting these holes open, and they're hitting that holes, and they're going to make a guy miss. There's going to be some. You're going to have to be satisfied with 4 yards. To put you in that 2nd and 6 situation. So it's been very encouraging for me to see this offensive line play together more than I thought they would throughout training camp.
Well, I got to make sure. I heard you say this right. You thought it was a bad call. You were a linebacker. Are you sure?
That's what we said.
I'm equal opportunity now at this point. I'm non-biased to offense or defense. I keep it absolutely real.
Keeps it real.
I am truly impressed. All right, so let's jump over to the defensive line now, and you've talked about it all show now. Myles Garrett, and he has been probably the biggest story out of camp.
It is. It's amazing. If we had a quarterback and that wasn't a story, I think all anybody would be talking about is Myles Garrett. This guy's getting 4 sacks a day out there. Yesterday put a spin move to beat a double team of Cam Irving and Joel Bitonio. That was one of the more impressive things I've ever seen. This guy every single day is making plays and is as good as advertised, and I can't wait to see him out there against the Steelers on September the 10th.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go. He's been fantastic, but you got to look at the we've only known that competition between him and Joe Thomas has only happened a speckling throughout training camp thus far. So I want to see Myles Garrett continue to do what he's been doing out here on practice, regardless of who it is. I want to see him do it against some of the starting tackles in this league. I know he's an impressive guy, and as you made mention of that move, the great thing that's encouraging to me about Myles Garrett is he's falling into these things naturally. A lot of these young pass rushers come in, they got one great move, and they just learn a secondary move or a third move, where Myles Garrett is just learning very, very quickly from Clyde Simmons and going out there and falling into these rushes, staying very active and powerful on his way to the quarterback.
We're talking about a player that other teams are going to have to scheme for, which is kind of refreshing for this team, especially when you look at the ages on this team. And it was hard not to look through the roster the other night and go, wow, there's like 3 guys on, I think it was on the white team, that had more than 3 years experience. And, you know, we talked about it in the Gatorade Hot Minute there just a few minutes ago about that mix between older guys and younger guys and what kind of an influence. But I think when you look at the big picture of it, it's about changing the culture.
Well, Andy, when you construct this roster and you look around this league, that's what the good teams do. They are a mix of draft picks that have signed second contracts. They are a mix of free agents that are signed to advance your organization, and you draft young players. So that influx of young athletic players that you see on the field very early.
All right, when we come back, we are going to talk about the Saints, a game you can watch right here on News 5. We'll look ahead to Thursday night. Preseason game number 1, Thursday night against the New Orleans Saints at First Energy Stadium. What do we have to look forward to, and what are some of the big storylines going into this week, Matt Wilhelm?
I think between now and Thursday night, it's the shakeups within this depth chart. You know, we talked about earlier how it might happen at the quarterback position. Is there going to be any wide receiver that emerges that you need to see more of along the defensive line? Are there any solid backups along that offensive line that need to get more snaps? So that's what I'll be watching this week for practice and prep for the Saints.
What are you looking at?
I can't wait to see the quarterbacks get hit and how they respond to that. It's the first time that's going to happen all year. You talked about the receivers. Jordan Leslie, can he build on a good Orange and Brown scrimmage? I know he got a little bit banged up yesterday, but will he take a step forward? And then I'm really curious to see how many reps Gibreel Peppers gets with the starters. I thought he stood out in the Orange and Brown. Now I want to see him against some elite NFL competition.
Myles Garrett against another team, and again, the quarterbacks without a doubt. We want to remind you on Thursday night, you want to join us right here on News 5. Of course, we'll have Building the Browns at 7 o'clock. It's everything you need to know with a unique perspective on how this team is being built. And then at 7:30, it's Browns Countdown. We'll see you on Thursday night. Have a great Sunday, everybody.